All right, lesson 10, you've made it. This is the final lesson in Resolve 19 certification lessons. Lesson 10 is all about delivery and media management. So in our previous lessons, you've used the quick export function to quickly export. Now we're going to go into the final page in Resolve, which is the deliver page. On the deliver page, it gives you much greater control over how you output. You can customize things, batch process, and you can create a bunch of different versions of exports for different platforms. So we'll learn how to optimize our audio, add and style subtitles. We'll create vertical timelines, reframe shots, and then we'll customize our export settings. And additionally, we'll cover media management, project archiving, and working with project libraries, including the Blackmagic Cloud. And so at the end, you'll understand how to prepare high quality deliverables efficiently for various distribution needs. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so for this lesson, we're going to work with a completed version of the Oregon Mountain Outfitters promo. Let's import this project, lesson 10, and it is the omopromodeliver.drp. Let's open it. I'm going to rename this. Let's get it open, reset our UI layout, and let's relink the media. I'm going to relink. So when you are delivering files, you need to meet specific requirements, including video resolution, frame rates, codecs, and audio loudness. Loudness ensures consistent audio levels across the content and preventing drastic volume changes. Resolve simplifies this process by giving you the ability to optimize loudness for different platforms. All right, so let's get into this section. Let's go to the deliver page. So the deliver page is divided into 5 main areas. We've got the render settings, the viewer, the render queue, your timeline, and the clip timeline. So at the top, the render settings are a series of different presets, and you can see many of these from the quick export window. So let's select the YouTube 1080 preset. So let's scroll, and you can see all these different presets here. Let's go into the YouTube 1080. And in this name, let's call it OMO Promo for YouTube, and we'll call it Final. You can see some of these have drop downs, and that's changing the different resolution types also. And let's save it into the Lesson 10 output folder. So let's review the settings and make sure everything is good. So we want a 1080, and our frame rate is the timeline frame rate, which shows us as 23976. All of these seem to be correct. We'll just keep it here. And we can then change our audio. So we'll normalize it, and we're going to optimize it to the standard. And the standard is already set to YouTube, and it has their specific specifications for their target loudness and target level. And at the end, we can add directly to a render queue. Now you can see some options here. You can render it without timecode, use the proxy media, or if you have the internet connections connected, you can upload it directly to the YouTube channel. Now if you do that, it will give you some options here, but because we're not connected, don't need to do that. So this job is now added to our render queue. Now the render queue is basically a list of jobs that will be rendered. So adding things to the render queue does not render it. You'll have to render it in the render queue. So what we're going to do before we export everything, we're actually going to add a few more jobs before we go and export. We're going to add some subtitles, and that's going to accompany our final video. And that's an important consideration, especially if you're going to social media. A lot of times they need to burn in some subtitles, or if you are delivering to a distribution platform like streaming, they're going to require subtitles. In Resolve, you can add subtitles in two main ways. You can create your own, or you can import a subtitle file. So for this one, we're going to create some subtitles manually before we import the remaining titles. If you're on Resolve Studio, you can automatically transcribe your timeline audio into subtitles that you can then edit. So let's go to the edit page. I'm going to do Shift 4, and let's open up our inspector. In our current timeline, which is the Omo promo finish, let's right-click on our timeline track. And we are going to add a subtitle track. So you'll see subtitle 1 is created and there's an actual bar. So it's a very different track than a video track or audio track. Let's go to the playhead and let's make sure our timeline playhead is at the start. And let's right click anywhere in our tracks and let's add a subtitle. And it looks just like a text title. So let's highlight this caption here and replace it with, let's type it gentle guitar music. So that will indicate what type of music that's playing. So we can preview that. So the default duration is 3 seconds, but you know that it's going to go through this whole thing.
My name is Chris Lang.
So we'll click anywhere in our subtitle track and we're going to add a new caption. We're going to type in what he says. My name is Chris Lang. The subtitle will wrap automatically, but we can add our own line breaks if we want. Let's place the cursor right here and we'll remove that space and hit enter and do a line break. So it looks a little bit more comfortable over here. And I'm going to spread that over there. So after he says Oregon Mountain Outfitters.
And I'm the founder of Oregon Mountain Outfitters.
Now these clips, you can edit them just like you can a normal clip down here. So I'm going to click this and drag it until it snaps. So let's add a new one. So click here, add new, and we're located in a store in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So let's make sure it ends in the correct place.
We are located in our store in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
So let's make sure it ends where he finishes New Mexico. And I can zoom in on the timeline just like normal.
Mexico.
So I'll add it and it drops right there.
We are located in our store in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Now we can continue manually adding this. I can show you how you can automatically transcribe this, but just like we did in our metadata lesson, if you're able to import that work, someone's already done it for you, then that makes everything easier. DaVinci Resolve supports the importing and exporting of a handful of different titles, so SRT, VTT, TTMLs, and DFXP subtitle files. So in the media pool, let's go into our master bin and let's create a new bin and call it subtitles. And we're going to import the subtitles into here. We'll go into File, Import, and it will have a specific subtitle file. Going back to our Lesson 10 subtitles, and let's import the US SRT. So it's added as a subtitle clip. And you can see that's a little bit of a different clip. Subtitle clips work a little differently than the normal media files. So let's click and drag it in. And let's make sure we have this file start when he says that second line. So we want
people to experience the Southwest because it's so unique. There's nothing like it that
So let's take a look at all the other ones.
Our brand is just really a reflection of our community and who we are. That's why we say, experience the Southwest.
So So you can adjust any of these subtitles directly on the timeline or by clicking on a clip and rewording it, modifying it. Now, just like any other title in Resolve, you can change the style of it. So let's select any of the subtitles, and in the inspector, let's click on the track tab. Now we are going to change the style and position of the entire track. So let's go into the background controls along subtitle 1. So scroll down to the background controls. Let's enable it. And that allows us to have a semi-transparent background, and that makes it a lot easier to read. Now, because we made this change in the track, it affects all of our subtitles on the track. So there are times when it might be necessary to adjust the controls of individual subtitles. So let's do that. Let's go into the first one, and it might be appropriate to change this into a different style so we can see that it's not dialogue. So let's click that first clip and go into the caption, and let's click on customize caption. And now we can change this into its own font and own style. Typically stuff like this that's referring to, music, it might be seen in italics. So because we customized the caption and not the track, it did not change everything into italics, just that first one. You can add multiple subtitle tracks in the timeline, and this is useful when you've got more than one language. So let's right-click the timeline track and add a new subtitle track. And let's import the subtitle that was in the bin, which was French. So we now have French subtitles, and let's drop that in. I'm going to trim this to fit that. So we're not going to be able to see it initially because, you've guessed it, this subtitle track has been disabled. So if we enable it, it will disable the other subtitle track, and we can look at the French. We'll rename the first subtitle track to OMO, and then English, and then we'll call the other one French. So only one subtitle track can be seen at a time. So, and let's style it the same. So let's go to the deliver page now, and we're going to create another export, but this is, let's say, for a streaming platform, and it needs a high quality export. So let's go into the custom export render setting. And instead of manually typing things out, we can use variables, just like we did with the metadata. So we'll call this file name whatever timeline name it is, so %timeline name. And then we'll add a space in HQ, so high quality. And we're going to export this into our high quality. So the timeline was called OMO promo finished. So that's the name of the timeline, and we just call it HQ. Make sure that it is exporting as a single clip rather than an individual clips. So essentially the difference is this will export one big file of your timeline, and this will export everything as individual clips. So you have a folder full of these clips. So that's good if you are finishing out your project or exporting or delivering your project in a different software. So if you're going back into, let's say, Premiere Pro, and you colored in here and you want to export all these colored files in Premiere, then you would choose individual clips and reassemble back in Premiere. But we're not doing that. We're exporting a single clip. So let's do that. And let's change the format to a high quality MXF OP1A. This is something that is something you'll see on both Windows and PC, so that's why they chose this. For those on the Mac, you'll definitely be choosing ProRes for high quality outputs. Let's go back OP1A and we'll use DNxHR, and the type we'll do DNxRHQ. So this is a high quality DNxH file at the timeline resolution and frame rate. Because we've created some subtitles here, let's open up the subtitles and let's make sure we are exporting these subtitles. And let's make sure it's formatted as a separate file. You can do it as embedded captions, or you can choose the burn into video option, and that will burn all the currently active subtitles with their styles into the final rendered file. So it's actually permanently included into the file. That's not what we want. We just want it as a separate file. And if you do embedded captions, it will add it into your export as metadata, and the appropriate software delivery platforms will see the correct version of whatever code captions you've embedded. We just need the separate file, and we are going to include both of our subtitled tracks. Then we'll go into our audio and we're going to normalize this audio. And we're going to optimize it to a certain standard, which would be the EBU R128. And so this is going to keep it at -23 for target loudness, and we'll just keep the target level there. And we're going to add the render queue. So if we use these presets quite a bit, if we're exporting to this distribution platform and it always requires these settings, you can create a render preset. In the options menu in the render settings, you can save as a new preset. Let's do this, and we'll call it MXF HQ and R128. And now it's added into our render settings as a custom output. You can also go into the menu. You can either update, export the preset, or delete it. Now, a cool tip is if you're editing and you want to add a timeline quickly to the deliver page without having to go through that process, if you've created a preset, you can go into the timelines and to add to render queue using a handful of different presets. All right, finally, we're going to make an export for a social media platform, and the example here is TikTok. And for TikTok, it's really common to have a vertical format. Now, because this was shot in landscape and not for vertical video, we're going to have to reframe and reposition these shots so it fits the vertical aspect ratio. So let's go back to the edit page. And if you're not in the edit page yet, let's go to the edit page. That's Shift 4. And if you don't know where the timeline is, you can click on the timeline and then find current timeline in media pool. And let's duplicate this timeline because we don't want to mess up any of our current exports. And we'll call this our TikTok. We'll turn off any of the active subtitle tracks, so we'll turn that one off. To get a sense of what it will actually look like if it were in a vertical orientation, we can change our timeline and put on the safe guides. So at the top of our timeline viewer next to the proxy dropdown, you can click some social media guides. And this is guiding. And so these are guides. They're not going to change our timeline resolution or anything like that. It's just a safe guide. So let's enable the 9:16 social media option. And we can preview this. So for those of you who may see the default also, you can turn that off by clicking. So this is just a toggle that will enable it. And if you wanted to turn off the guides itself, you can just click on the icon itself and not the drop down. So I turned it off. Let's turn it back on. And so this is what the project would look like with that on. So you can see that not everything is going to fit properly. So what we're going to have to do is reposition things. So what we're going to do is, in our timeline, we're going to have to make some marks to let us know that we need to do some work. All right, in the first graphic, make sure no clips are selected. Again, we want to make a timeline marker and not a marker on the clip itself. So let's choose, click away, and let's hit M. And hit M again, and we're going to call this reframe 1. We'll call this reframe 1. Next, we'll go over to the Peña Blanca 44 shot. And we're going to also reframe. So on this other shot, what we're going to do is try to include everyone in the shot. So we're going to create a little bit of a camera move in there. So we'll call it a pan. And we're going to do a red timeline marker just to differentiate it. This shot here doesn't get him all the way through, so we are going to pan it to follow him. So we'll do pan 2, and we'll call this, or label it red. So we're going to use these timeline markers to quickly locate it when we are reframing. Okay, so now we're going to change our timeline. All right, so now that we've prepped our timeline, let's change our timeline so that it actually fits into the proper export settings. So let's go to our TikTok timeline, and we're going to change the settings for this. Timeline settings. Currently, it's using the project settings, so we can't change anything. So let's deselect the project settings, and we are going to make some changes. So the first thing is use vertical resolution. So it's going to click on that, and it's going to flip it so it's 1080 by 1920. So this not only changes the timeline resolution to 1080 by 1920, but it changes the mismatch resolution option down at the bottom to scale full frame with crop. So this means the footage will now fill the aspect ratio rather than being letterboxed with black lines. So if it doesn't do this, it will look like this. So let's go back to timeline settings and full frame with crop. So now this is going to be reframed. You can see that doesn't work. This could use a pan. Doesn't work at all. And interestingly enough, the title is now framed to fit this resolution. So let's start reframing shots. Let's go to the marker index and let's go to the reframe one. With our graphics selected, let's go into the retime scaling in the inspector tab. Let's click to drop down the options. And with the scaling, we're going to make it fit. So scaling it to fit made it fit within the timeline resolution, but it also kept the motion that we've created. Let's go to reframe 2. And let's use our transform overlay controls. Let's hit shift the tilde button to turn it on, or you can turn on these transform controls here. So let's click on the Peña Blanca clip to make sure that we are working on the correct clip. And let's hold shift to keep one of the axes set, and let's drag it to the right. Let's take a look at that clip now. Okay, so that works. Sometimes we'll have to use keyframes to adjust the framing, especially that shots that don't really fit our aspect ratio. So let's go to our first pan shot, and let's go to the beginning of the clip. So let's click on the clip to make sure that we are working on the correct clip. Now, if you're moving the transform overlay and it doesn't look like you're doing anything to the shot, make sure you've selected the shot itself. Right now I have the Peña Blanca clip selected, but my timeline is over this White Sands clip. If I click and drag, I'm actually dragging the Peña Blanca clip. So let's move this back. Go here, White Sands at the beginning of the clip, and select the White Sands clip. You know the clip is selected if you're looking at the inspector and it shows you the name of the clip. All right, White Sands 11 is set. Let's move our playhead towards the beginning of our frame. And let's shift over so that we can see our person on the left, and let's create a keyframe here. Let's go kind of towards the end and shift it back over so we can see these people on the right. And it's already created another keyframe so we can see how that works. All right, you can see that the red line here, that shows the motion path of the clip. So that's how it will travel. So it's just traveling in a straight line. So let's say we wanted to edit the timing and the way it moves because it looks it stops kind of like right on a dime. It looks a little weird. So let's look at the bottom right of the clip, and once you have keyframes, you can then edit the keyframe. So this is the keyframe position, and this is the curves editor. This curves editor allows you to change the way the motion is for each of those parameters. So this is position Y, but we need position X. Okay, that's fine. We'll just highlight this first one, and right now it's set to linear, and let's try to ease it in. So it slowly kind of ease in. There we go. So this position, let's go to ease in. And then this other position, let's ease it out. So what's going to happen is it will then slowly kind of ease back into that end. You can then grab these Bezier handles and change the animation curve to each of it. So we can use this as a basis for the animation for the other clips. So let's click on this shot and let's copy it. So edit, copy. Let's go to the second pan here. And we're going to edit, paste attributes, or right click, paste attributes. So since we need to apply the horizontal movement, let's select the position control. And from that, we'll choose the keyframe options and we'll do stretch to fit. So this will ensure that the timing of the keyframes that we've created in the previous clip, they're adjusted relative to the duration of this Peña Blanca 48 clip. So let's apply it. So you'll find that the pan may finish a little too soon. We're not in the right position. So let's refine it. So we can open the keyframe editor and let's move to the second keyframe and let's position it properly. Okay, let's watch that. Okay, that works. Now, if you're working in DaVinci Resolve Studio, there is a feature called Smart Reframe, and that uses the neural engine to reframe shots. Okay, so it's this shot, and we're going to go into the Smart Reframe, and the object of interest currently has set to auto. We can also set it as a reference point. So there's a Smart Reframe target, and in here you can move this box and it's going to look inside this box and it's going to reframe the shot based on whatever is in that box. Next thing we want to do is then hit reframe. It's going to analyze the clip. And reframe things for us. You can see that it's creating keyframes. Now we could have just did that with, let me reset this. We could have just done this, set a reference point, we just use auto and see how it does. And it probably does the same sort of thing. So what it's doing is using the DaVinci neural engine and looking at people or objects and making sure it's staying in the frame. So again, this is only part of the studio version. So if you're working on the free version, you won't see this option in your inspector. Now with all of the main shots being reframed, let's turn on the subtitle track back. And we can see that none of these are framed properly because it was created with the 1920 by 1080 width. What we need to do is make sure that it fits within that. So let's go into the subtitle track. And we're going to have to change the zoom level so it fits. So what we need to do is make sure that all the subtitles fit, especially the longer ones. And it's probably this one. These two are the widest ones. So we could maybe right around there. Looks good. All right, so it looks like this is all ready. This is it for us. And let's go to deliver. Let's hit Shift 8. Okay, and we'll choose the TikTok preset. And for timeline, since we've already named this OMO promo TikTok, and that's fine, we'll just use our variable and just use the timeline name. And we're gonna browse and go to our web output for that one. And we want to make sure that the resolution is set to use the vertical resolution All right, that's good. And once that's done, let's add to our render queue. Now again, remember, none of these jobs are actually rendered. We have just put it in a list or a queue so that whenever we're ready to render, we can just render them all at once. So let's look at the render queue. In the options menu, you can see more information. Let's look at the show job details just to look specifically at what each job is. 1080, H.264, 1080, DNX HR, and this is 1080 by 1920. When we want to render it, make sure you have, see it says render 1. Now when we're ready to render everything, you got to be mindful of what is selected or not selected. So if we wanted to render everything, we have to make sure that we are not selecting any specific job. These click away, so none of these jobs are highlighted. You can tell Resolve to render them all. If you do have one selected or two, it will render whatever you've selected. So right now, I can select all three, and it's render all, or click away, and it's going to render all also. And let's go and render them. So each job is then rendered in order, and you can see a percentage, and then a green shows that it's completed. Now, since they're done, we can right-click and reveal in Finder, or open file location on Windows. You reveal in Finder, and then it will show you where it's been exported, and it's in our YouTube bin. Let's look at this high quality. And so it's been exported with the MXF file and then our two SRT files also. And then finally, let's look at the TikTok. And so it's in our vertical resolution. So now that all of them are exported, they're ready to be uploaded or distributed to where it needs to go. In this final section, we're going to talk about exporting timelines, project files, and media management. Now, outside of the exported media and delivered files, there are often elements of a project that you can export for different reasons. So first off, you may want to export a timeline file, and this can be useful for sharing edited versions of different timelines with other people. In the past, there's something called an EDL, which is still used today, XMLs, and that's one way of going back and forth from different software. So Premiere to Resolve or Resolve back to Premiere, you would use an XML. But the problem is that there's not 100% accuracy between those systems. So if you wanted to manually back up your timelines and you wanted to send your timeline to another Resolve user, then you're best off using a DaVinci Resolve timeline file, which is a DRT. So in the edit page, let's go into our promo finished timeline and do file export timeline. And we'll choose DRT. And we'll go into the output folder. And we're going to create a timelines folder. And let's save that. So this DRT file has exported this entire timeline. And you can bring it into any other Resolve project by File, Import, Timeline. Now, sometimes you may want to export the entire project. So let's go to choose File, Export Project. And we're going to create a new folder called Project. And let's export the entire project there. Now, outside of exporting a project file and a timeline file, there's another way of managing your media, and this is sometimes what you'll have to do is create an archive of your project. These are all the individual video, audio, and graphics files that you've used when working on your project. And many times these files can be spread across a bunch of different hard drives, when you've been working. So at the end of a project, it'd be good to create an archive and consolidating all of this files into one location. So there's two different approaches you can take: consolidating it and trimming. So consolidating, it's really useful when you've got a lot of files across a bunch of different hard drives. And so the system will bring all of those files into one location. Trimming will copy just the part of the media that you're using throughout your project. And this can be really helpful since it doesn't really include media that's not being used. And so typically the end media will be much smaller in the storage size. And please remember, none of this archival process is going to change your source media. It's not going to move it or delete it from your original and move it to this new one. What it's doing is just creating a copy of it. So to do an archive, we're going to go through the built-in Media Management panel. So let's go to File, Media Management, and this allows us to manage all of the media in our project, or specific timelines, or specific clips. So this allows us to copy or transcode clips. So make sure our entire project and copy is being used, and you can see there's a current size. And let's go into Browse and go into the Media Management folder. And let's save it there. So with these settings, what it's going to do is we're going to copy all the media that we used for this project, keep it in a project name subfolder in there. So it's going to duplicate all those media files. Let's click the Timelines tab. So part of this allows us to select a specific timeline that we want to archive. So these two are the timelines which will manage the media. So let's choose Used Media and keep So for this one, we are saving the timelines that we used. And we'll copy the used media and we'll trim, keeping the 24 frame handles. So note that when we choose from used media to use media and trim, it changed the current size to something that's a lot smaller. All right, so let's start. And let's go to the Media Management folder, and we have a folder here, and it has all of the media that's used, graphics, and there are two timelines. These are the two timelines that we selected. And let's take a look and see how we can utilize that. Let's create a new project. And Media Managed project, and we'll create. Let's import timeline. And it will only allow us to do the DRTs. So we're looking for timelines specifically. So we're going to bring in the final. And we're also going to bring in the other TikTok timeline. And so you see that all the media has been brought in. Now there's another easy way of managing your media, and that's creating a project archive. Now a project archive is going to take everything that you've imported, all the assets, all the different media files that you've brought into your project, not just the ones in your timeline. And it's going to put that into a folder and create a project for that. Now keep in mind, the archiving a project process, it copies all your source files, even if they're on different drives, and puts them in the archive folder along with the project file. And this doesn't create any trimmed versions. To create a project archive, you have to do it through the project manager. And we're going to create a project archive of this omo project.mm. Right click and we are going to export a project archive. And let's go back to our archive. Okay, so we're going back to our output folder and choosing archive. And we'll call this archive. And it's going to ask us what we want to save. Do we want to save the media files, the render cache, and or the proxy media? Sure, let's save everything. So when we go back to our archive, this now creates a DRA. It has the cache and all your media files and a project file. Now we've already gone over how to restore a project archive in lesson 4, but I'll do that here. If we're on a different system and someone gives us a DRA, this is how you are bringing in that DaVinci Resolve archive. You do not import it, you restore the project archive. So restore project archive, and you click on the DRA folder. Don't click inside of it, just click on the DRA, hit open. It's going to create OMO project archive with all the media attached. Next is creating and switching project libraries. Now I've talked about project libraries before. We'll go to our project, and these are the different project libraries that I've got. You have the ability to create some on your own local drive, on a network if you want to collaborate, or if you had a network infrastructure, or you can do the cloud, which we've talked about already. So the project library sidebar. So let's create a new project library. And we want to create a new project. And we're going to save it in our lesson 10 folder. I'll just call this project library, and we'll open that. Once that's done, you can hit create. So this is a new empty project library ready for all your new projects. You can copy projects between them really easily. So I'm going to go back to my project. I'm going to, let's say, this archive. I'm going to use this button to copy project to. I'll just choose a few different projects here. And my project library, choose that. Let's go back to our project library. And there are all the 3 ones that we've chosen. We can then also choose to back up our project library just in case something happens with our current hard drive or wherever you saved it. Having a backup of your project library keeps a copy of your entire project library and all the projects within it safe. So let's click the details button, which is in the eye, and you can back up, duplicate, reveal in Finder. We'll do a backup, and we'll save it into our, let's say, backup folder. Now, after saving it, a file is then created, and I'll go to backup. And so this, my project library.resolve.disk database, and you can just copy it to wherever. You can put it on a cloud server, so you can constantly have something saved there. And on your new computer, you can click the restore button in the Resolve menu and open and use this disk database. So I'll show that. This is a restore button, and we're going to restore this backup. And where do I want to restore it? I'll just say backup. I got to choose a new place. Click open and create. And there we go. Backup. I'm going to remove that because I don't need that. Okay, and the final thing we are going to be looking at are project libraries in the Blackmagic Cloud. So I already did a demo earlier in the semester about the Blackmagic Cloud, but we'll just do this again. So one of the great things about the Blackmagic Cloud is that you can save your projects in the cloud and it's automatically saved there, and you can easily switch between machines without worrying about whether or not you have the most up-to-date project. Also, using the project library will allow you to collaborate with multiple users, and you can work on all work on the same project at the same time. So for example, I could be editing something and another person could be working on the Fusion VFX. Someone could be coloring and a colorist could be grading the same timeline all at the same time. There is a small cost to having a project library, and we'll walk through that, but that can be canceled anytime and you won't be locked out of your work. You can copy projects from the Blackmagic Cloud to your local project at any time. So you won't be locked out of your project if you decide to stop working with the Blackmagic Cloud. So I'm going to go through the process of creating a project in a project library. First thing you need to do is sign into the cloud project library. So I currently have one project library that I pay for and some storage. Okay, so one of the things you want to do is create a Blackmagic Cloud ID. And you can sign up for one for free on the Blackmagic website. You can go to that website. You can create a free account if you haven't already. I'll log into my account. And this is the page that you'll see when you're in there. So there's a project server. This is the project libraries. So you can create new ones. I'll add a project library. So this requires me to upgrade. So I currently have one project library that I'm paying for, and that costs 500 gigs, one project library, 20 presentations, and I can have up to 30 people on my library. $7.50 a month. If I wanted to add an extra project library, it would be $5 added on. You have cloud storage. I have 500 gigs here. There's a bunch of different ones. And then, all right, so then there's a list of all the presentations that I've been invited to for our first project. All right. I can also invite people into the project library by sharing. All right, so let's go back into Resolve and go into the cloud. And this is the project library. If you have a free account, you won't have a project library, but you can test out some of the features if someone else invites you to their project library. So now that we're in the cloud and we've got a project library created, I can create a new project. And I'll call this the cloud. Oops. So we're going to choose a location for our project media. I'm going to keep this in this default folder. And if I wanted to have a multi-user collaborative project, I'll allow multiple users. And synchronizing storage with the Blackmagic Cloud, I can sync the proxies, have that essentially upload to my cloud storage. And then anyone connected to my project will then have access to those files, and they'd be able to download it into their project whenever they sign on to the Blackmagic cloud. And for remote camera access, this is something that is part of the cameras that they make, and the app that they have. You can film on the camera and it would upload automatically into this project. Create this project, and it's the Organ Mountain Promo Cloud. So now I'm going to set up my project so that it works with the cloud. Okay, so at the bottom right, there are a number of new icons. This icon shows you how many project members are currently working. This icon is a chat feature, so I can chat with folks that are currently logged in. And additionally, this is the cloud sync. So this will tell me how much media I'm working with, how much cloud storage is available, and whether or not that is currently being synced. So right now it is constantly syncing. I can pause it if I need to, and I can enable the camera capture. And here are the Blackmagic Cloud settings. This is where my project media will be saved. You can see the proxies and the display media that's been synced for the past month, week, or day. When I'm importing media, it will then start creating proxies in the background. I'm going to choose this lowest bitrate and save it. I'm just going to bring in all of the Organ Mountain Outfitters work, and I'll change that. Okay, so as it is importing, I'll look at the Blackmagic sync, and it's currently going to start working in the background by creating proxies of these files, uploading it to my cloud server and the cloud storage. So it estimates that I've got 583 megabytes of proxy footage that it needs to upload. Okay, so it's uploaded. If it's uploaded, it has a check mark. Let me go to loves. Okay, there is a column now that says Cloud Sync, and so this is telling me that it is currently in the process of getting that stuff synced up. I'm going to look at the proxy column. Okay, so it will be creating proxies at 540 resolution, and it's going to be uploading that. Check means it's already uploaded, and I can check the sync over here. So it has already uploaded all of my interview footage. You can go back here. You can see this as a check mark, media uploaded. Let me go to my cloud storage, and here's the OMO Promo Cloud. We'll jump in there, and it's going to show you just a long chain. Okay, media, Organ Mountain Outfitters, and here are the proxy files. So this is stored up in the cloud, and whenever anyone is invited to this project and they open up the project on whatever machine they're at, they'll start downloading this footage, and they'll be downloading the proxies. I know that because that's how I have it set. I'm only syncing the proxies. If I wanted to sync the proxies and the originals, I'll choose this. What it's going to do is upload the proxies first, and then upload the originals as after that's done. And so then this would take a lot of space, depending on how big your project is. This project in total is probably, I think it said 2 gigs or 3 gigs. So I could ostensibly actually do this and upload everything, but I'm not going to do that. All right, you made it. That is the end of lesson 10 and the end of the beginner's guide to Resolve 19. And hopefully this has been illuminating and helpful so you can see what all you can do in this software. If you'd like to dive in deeper, there are going to be more books. There's going to be an edit book, color book, Fairlight, and a Fusion VFX book. Go through the lessons again, and at the end, you are now able to take the Resolve 19 certification exam for the beginner's guide. Look out on Canvas for the instructions and for the link. All right, thank you.